Howdy, howdy. What is going on? And welcome to episode 22 of the Back of the End Zone podcast. I'm Josh Reisig here with Bryant Kleski. And
we have a little bit of a different setting here. We're using a different part of the studio. We're going to start using the sport desk more, especially since college football season is back in full swing, especially starting Thursday night with some games. The sports desk is pretty cool. You know, South Alabama, we thank, Department of Communication for letting us use this, and the people that that give us access to this, we thank them. But man, I love our little new setup here.
I think it just looks nicer too. I mean, the other setup was nice. It's a little bit more conversational, I think, but I think this just kind of fits more of our Back of the End Zone style with the podcast and football.
Exactly. And then next week we're going to try to have these screens on, make it even look more awesome. But yeah, this week, man, we got a loaded Week 1 schedule. We're going to dive into some Week 0 recap, USC and San Jose State, Notre Dame and Navy.
And that's one of the things I kind of want to dive into, too. Not as much Notre Dame, but more Sam Hartman.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are trying not to hype up Sam Hartman too much, but, man, I'm loving it right now. And if I'm a Notre Dame fan,
I really liked what I saw from him. I think they found a real quarterback, and, we'll dive more into that later. And then we'll dive into some coaches that you would think, make it or break it years where if they don't achieve the goals that, the fans expect, analysts and other people expect, and that they themselves expect, could find themselves looking for a job, in the offseason or be on a hotter seat than they were coming into the season.
There's a couple really big-name coaches that we kind of have in mind that could be seeing the boot at the end of this year or close to seeing
or that
the boot.
Seat is just getting hotter and hotter as the season goes along.
Exactly. So it'll be interesting. We're excited to dive right into it for episode.
And then a Week 1 preview, man. We're gonna start something new here. Every week, as we're previewing, games into the college football season, at the end of every episode, we're gonna do a pick'em style segment where we'll invite a guest picker to come on. Whether it can be a random student, it could be a friend of ours, or somebody we know, or a player, or a coach, whoever wants to get involved in this. And then at the end of the season, whichever guest picker does the best on each episode, whoever has the best picks and is the closest,
we'll give
a little prize. Yes, little prize.
Can't guarantee what that prize will be yet, but it'll be something special.
Oh, yeah.
So, heck yeah! But we're excited to get right into it. This is episode 22, the Back of the End Zone podcast.
All right, for segment 1, before we start, this segment and the podcast is sponsored by Now Fitness. Now Fitness is a gym and fitness center based in Groveville, Alabama. They do personal training, group sessions with CrossFit and other workouts, and they help their local athletes train and get in their best shape. Call 251-269-3065 for more. We can't thank them enough and 251 Pool Works, who we will mention in the next segment, for sponsoring us the last month and a half or so during the summer. And man, it's been a crazy ride with both of them, and we can't wait to continue that journey with them and hopefully gain some more support as well. But man, so segment 1, we're going to kind of do a Week 0 recap. I want to start off with USC San Jose State. It wasn't really much to behold. I did kind of hate that San Jose covered the spread. The spread was at minus 30.5. It was like it was 56-28. Little backdoor cover for San Jose State. Not really anything different has changed with USC. I mean, we're not really to. I mean, I don't want to blast their defense based off one game, but it is against San Jose State, and they gave up 28 points, and it was a little bit of a dogfight early.
Oh, 100%. I think for me, one of the biggest takeaways, I watched the game, legally streamed it on the Pac-12 network, but had to do it because I was like, I got to watch this USC team to see if they really step things up. Because I think early USC was up like 14-7 or something, and that's when
it was like 21-14 at the half. And
the big thing that I took away from it was USC still really doesn't have a defense. And one of the biggest plays that kind of stood out to me was 2-minute drill. San Jose State is driving down the field. I think there was like it was like a 1-minute drill. There was less than a minute left of the game. And San Jose State drove down the field and scored with like 30 seconds to go on complete blown coverage. Like USC's, and I mean, I understand it's the first game of the season and stuff like that's going to happen in the first game. Like it does happen. But against San Jose State, that's where I think that games like things like that should not be happening. San Jose State did not have a great year last year in the Mountain West. They weren't like they were the Mountain West champions or anything. And their defense just did not look good. It was one of the same things as last year where it was just like, what is their defense doing? They're like San Jose State's quarterback threw for 3 touchdowns, almost 200 yards. Like,
yeah, and then San Jose State rushed for almost 200 yards, 198 yards. There was one play that stood out to me. I was like, it was mid first quarter. It was like one of San Jose State's like second or third drives. It was like San Jose State was in USC territory, and it was a long third down play. It was like third and like 17, third and 18, and USC just completely loses the quarterback, and he scrambles for the first down, and then San Jose State ends up scoring on that drive. Like I said, USC defense has got to get better. They got to get better up front. They got to be able to put pressure on the quarterback because they're gonna face some teams that will be physical. Oregon will be physical. Utah will be very physical. They're always a physical team. They played Notre Dame, who we'll get to in just a minute, but they were very physical against Navy. Notre Dame's always a physical team, but with this team, I felt a little bit of a different way, even though it was against Navy.
Exactly. But I mean, either way, though, even though it was against Navy, and we're going to get into Sam Hartman in a second, but I saw stuff all over social media where people were like trying to just crap on Notre Dame as much as they could.
Yeah.
Like it was against Navy. You shouldn't be promoting Sam Hartman this much. Either way, on any team, if it was Ohio State and Kyle McCord had a game like that against Indiana or Navy or whoever it is, any team, anybody, like you're going to be proud of how your quarterback's playing against any team. And he had a great performance. The thing is, USC just should have had a much better performance against a team like this.
At least defensively. Now, offensively, it's what you would expect from Lincoln Riley's offense. Caleb Williams back. They lose Jordan Addison, but they had some guys take their place. I was very impressed with one of their freshman wide receiver. He was the number one wide receiver in the nation in last year's recruiting class, Zachariah Branch.
Dude, he had a game.
I mean, dude's going to be special. They also have Taj Washington, a couple other guys. The running back, I forget his name. He had a good game. So USC, it's about what you would expect. But now, on the other side, Notre Dame and Navy played in Ireland, man. They won 42-3. And, man, Notre Dame was just physical out the gate. They were getting the running game going. Sam Hartman was wheeling and dealing. And, Notre Dame has this bad rap of being good again, having a lousy schedule and then not being good, playing
to the level of the teams that they're usually facing. Like last year, I think it was a huge upset to Notre Dame fans. Week 2 last year, losing to Marshall, and Notre Dame was like a top 10 team at the time. Still, I think they may have been just outside of the top 10 last year when they lost to Marshall. But it was pretty depressing. But now with Sam Hartman coming in, he goes 19 for 23, which is 82.6 completion percentage. 251 yards and 4 touchdowns. I don't care that it's against Navy. He threw for 250 yards and 4 touchdowns. People could say, but he didn't throw for 300. No. But he threw, just his passing efficiency is something that, really stood out to me because of the fact that Sam Hartman, he's in his 6th year of college football and never in the last at least 2 years, in the 2021 season and the 2020 season at Wake Forest, he never threw for over 80%.
Yeah.
And his first game with Notre Dame goes out there and only has 4 incompletions off of 23 attempts. That's special.
Yeah. And, Sam Hartman, I've always been, ever since I think I started watching Sam Hartman, I think it was 2020, the 2020 year, because I think Wake Forest gave a couple of ACC teams. 2020 was the COVID year, where basically you play outside the playoff and the bowl games. You play teams from your own conference. But Sam Hartman, I was really impressed with him, and been impressed with him since. And Sam Hartman's just a dude. 2021 was his best year, through for over 4,000 yards. Kept Wake Forest relevant. I think they made the ACC title game that year. That played Pitt. That was when Kenny Pickett was there as well at Pitt. The fake slide. But had it not been for Kenny Pickett and crew, Wake Forest could have had an ACC title in 2021, but last year was a little bit different because he started off the season with like a heart condition that prevented him from playing the first couple of games. I don't exactly remember what it was, but then he still came in. He threw for over 3,000 yards, 38 touchdowns, something like that. So Sam Hartman is a dude. That's the reason why I had him in my top 5 quarterback list.
100%.
And it just came out the other day that he chose Notre Dame over Alabama because, like he said, Bama reached out to him. I think it was like Florida. So as a Bama fan, kind of makes me a little bit bitter that after watching him this weekend and knowing what our quarterback situation is right now at Bama, I'm unsure about what our quarterbacks are, but I am sure about what Sam Hartman is. And I'm probably a fool for buying into the hype this early. But Notre Dame, with their schedule, if they can navigate their schedule and go 11-1 or even go undefeated, they play teams like Ohio State. If they can somehow upset Ohio State at home, or even a close game, they beat USC, they beat Clemson, and they go undefeated or 11-1, they could be a real problem, especially if they navigate through that schedule, because that schedule is not sunshine and rainbows.
Even if they come out of that schedule with even 2 losses, say they lose to like Clemson and they lose to Ohio State, or just say they lose to one of those teams, they can still sneak into the playoff.
And it helps that they don't have, and people dog on them for not being in a conference, but it helps that they don't have a conference championship
because of all these top teams that they're playing. Those 3 teams, USC, Clemson, and Ohio State alone.
And I think they play Duke. Who say what you want about Duke? We're gonna preview Clemson at Duke later, but Duke I think has a real squad this year. Maybe not easily on a playoff squad, but I think they could make some noise in the ACC.
Yeah, 100%. But also going back a little bit of backtrack. I just want to go back to Zachariah Branch because that dude literally I'm like that kickoff return, 96-yard kickoff return. I'm like he is seriously that's one thing that's super special about that USC offense. But it really does comes down to the defense. But Zachariah Branch, man, he's going to have a good year.
Yeah,
could be a potential future Heisman winner later on, maybe in 2 years.
And like I said, for USC, it just comes down to up front. They got to get more physical on the defensive side of the ball. They got to get more physical up front on the offensive line as well. There were a few times where it felt like Caleb Williams was running for his life. And so they got to get more physical because as they get into conference play, they're going to run into some very physical teams. Washington, Oregon, Utah, Notre Dame. They could seriously.
One thing that I was happy to see, though, was that I feel like Caleb Williams was not running for his life as much as last year.
Yeah, that's true.
There was a lot more plays where he had a chance to get out of the pocket and maybe pick up 5, 6, maybe even 10 yards. But he stayed in the pocket and waited.
Yeah.
He was patient and just waited a little bit. And I think last year he was a little more antsy to run right away. And I was happy to see that.
Yeah.
That was another big plus for USC and Caleb Williams.
Yeah, those 2 games, they are what they are. And we're against, top opponents. But, we're about to get into week 1. We're about to see some top games. And, as we're getting into week 1, there are some coaches, starting off their seasons this year who might be going into the hot seat a little bit. And I don't want to throw Marcus Freeman in there, but I want to mention his name in there first as we're talking about their name. Depending on how their year goes this year, they went 8-4 last year, even with the loss to Marshall. They after that loss to Marshall, they kind of picked things up. But if they have that another kind of year where it's like they felt like they could have achieved more and they didn't, I'm not saying Marcus Freeman's not going to get the boot after 2 years, but
he won't,
the seat will start to warm up.
Especially because of the fact too, where it wasn't like he was. I'm happy Notre Dame took him. He's a former Ohio State linebacker, whatever. Nothing But at the same time, though, it's he kind of just had to fill that seat after Brian Kelly left. Brian Kelly left for LSU, and I think Notre Dame kind of scrambled to look for someone right away.
And the players were 100% behind Marcus Freeman.
And he was a great defensive coordinator, and the players were behind it. So yes, he got it, people's choice type of thing. Everybody liked him on the team. But the thing is, it really does come down to this year for Marcus Freeman because if he doesn't have a great year, if he underperforms, say he loses some of the games. So say even if he were to lose to USC, Clemson, and Ohio State, all 3 of those teams, I don't think he would be on the hot seat.
No.
If he loses some of the games that he shouldn't be losing, then he's that seat's definitely going to get really hot really fast.
Yeah, and then another name I want to mention, and it's in the SEC, and A&M fans may agree or disagree with me, but Jimbo Fisher's got to be in there. And I personally think A&M's going to have a bounce back year. I think they're very dangerous. As when we talked about them back in the summer, I think they're very dangerous. I think they're the sleeper pick in the SEC out of the three teams we've mentioned the most in the SEC, LSU and Alabama and Georgia. I think A&M is very sneaky because of all the talent that they have, and Bobby Petrino is a really good offensive coordinator. What it comes down to me is, can him and Bobby Petrino mesh? Can they mesh? And I heard a great. I think our friend Jake Crane tweeted this either yesterday or the day before, or some. It was early this week. He tweeted it. He heard something. He heard there was a quote about like it's not going to come down to play calling when it comes to how do we know who's running the show on offense, if it's Jimbo or if it's Petrino. It's going to be on those game on the line situations like third and fourth down, stuff like that. He tweeted something like that. Anyway, Jimbo, if they went like 5-7, 6-6 last year. They lost to App State, a team that they shouldn't have lost to. They beat LSU, so I mean that, but and there were some games that they lost last year that they probably shouldn't have, and they have so much talent. They had the number 1 recruiting class in 2022. They had a top 5 recruiting class last cycle, and so he has the talent. He just got to put it together. But if they have a letdown year this year, say they go 9-3 or 8-4. I mean, that probably wouldn't be,
I don't think he'll get the boot, but if he underperforms this year,
his seat is already kind of hot. It's warm. It's warm. It is getting hotter and hotter as But he just named his starting quarterback in Connor Wegman. I'm sorry if I put that name wrong.
You did.
But anyway, I think A&M's going to have a bounce back year. So, but if they underperform again this year, and if they have a similar year to what they did last year, which I don't think they will, Jimbo could still be on the hot seat. What prevents him from probably being fired is his buyout, because it's still like 80-something million.
Exactly.
But still.
For me, there's 2 Big Ten teams in the mix with 2 coaches that I don't think will get the boot this year. But if they underperform this year, they could be seeing it next year within the conference realignments and all that sort of stuff. But I think one coach that may kind of throw some people off, but I think Ryan Day, if he underperforms, as an Ohio State fan, if Ryan Day underperforms this year, I don't think he's going to get the boot, but I think his seat's going to be really hot, especially if you lose to Michigan 3 years in a row. That's unacceptable at Ohio State. That's not good for Ohio State standards. If you're not at the Big Ten championship, like Ohio State needs to win the Big Ten championship every year or be there. And that's like, as a fan perspective, as a Big Ten fan, like Ohio, if Ryan Day underperforms this year, say he loses to Michigan, say he loses to Penn State too, that seat is going to be extremely high.
Yeah.
And people, I mean, as a fan perspective, people might be wanting Brian Hartline to get that jump and get the head coaching job too. But
yeah.
I think that Ryan Day, this is like a make it or break it, prove it year. And say he underperforms this year, I think he has 1 year left when USC and UCLA and all those Pac-4 teams come into the mix. I think that'll change it up a little bit. But the other Big Ten team that I think that has a coach that's on the hot seat is Penn State with James Franklin. I think James Franklin has the chance to have a really good year this year. I think this is one of the better Penn State teams he's had since Saquon and Trace McSorley were there back in like 2017. But the huge thing is,
we just don't know what his quarterback is.
Exactly. I mean, they still, as of today, they still haven't even announced a starting quarterback. It's more than likely going to be Drew Aller.
I'm sure it's Drew Aller.
I think we all know that. But the thing is, like, Penn State doesn't have an easy schedule because they're like, and this is the last year that Penn State will be playing both Michigan and Ohio State annually.
Yeah.
After that, they're only going to see one of the teams out of those 2 every year. And if James Franklin,
it's probably a sigh of relief for them, though.
Exactly, it is a sigh of relief for them. But if Penn State loses to both Michigan and Ohio State this year, and then maybe drop another game, I think James Franklin might be on the way out, just because for Penn State standards, like, they're trying to be up there too. And just every year, James Franklin always falls short to those teams. He always falls short to Ohio State, always falls short to Michigan. And
I think I don't know. I don't know if I agree with you on those 2, because I do think Ryan Day. Because if they get rid of Ryan Day, who they gonna get? That's my thing. Is like who is out there right now who's better You're not going to get Kirby. You're not going to get Nick Saban.
I know we're not going to get any of them.
You're not going to get Dabo.
That's not what I'm asking out of it. I just think if Ryan Day underperforms this year, Ohio State athletics, like the athletic program, athletic director, they're losing Gene Smith, their athletic director, but I think that as a fan perspective, they're going to be really upset losing. If we lose to Michigan this year, 3 years in a row to Michigan is going to piss a lot of people off.
Yeah.
Because it shouldn't happen. And as a coach perspective, you shouldn't be letting that happen either way. And I'm not saying that, I don't know. I think that if they were to get rid of Ryan Day, say 2 years down the road, if things hit the shitter and it doesn't get any better, I think that I could totally see Ohio State promoting Brian Hartline and Brian Hartline being the head coach.
Maybe. We have to see what he does at OC first. But
exactly.
Another team for me, going to the ACC, he's in his second year, but I mean, it's still, up in the air. Mario Cristobal at Miami. When they brought in Mario Cristobal, I mean, even me, I thought, the U was going to be back. He was going to bring back that physicality. He recruits really well on the offensive line, which he did. He did recruit the offensive line pretty well in 2023 cycle, the recruiting class. But those guys are still freshmen. Who knows if they get playing time early? And they still, they're freshmen. So, but Miami had a letdown year last year. They competed with A&M, but they still lost. They have A&M coming to them this year, but they lost to Middle Tennessee State, and they just it just didn't go the way Miami fans would have hoped in his first year. I think if he has another subpar year this year, you lose to a team that you shouldn't. You get blown out by A&M at home, or something like that, and you underperform. I think I don't know. I think Mario Cristobal's seat could start getting warm and getting hot, and then. The last team for me, I think, would be back in the SEC is Missouri, with Eli Drinkowitz with Missouri. Now he has kind of picked up in recruiting. NIL has allowed some of these teams, like Missouri, to pick it up in recruiting. They got the number one. They got right now. They have the number one overall recruit. Yes, the Missouri Tigers has the number one overall recruit in the 2024 class committed to them. Whether he signs with them, that's a different story. And then they're about to pick up. I think they're about to pick up a 5-star receiver. From the state of Texas, which would be weird because, that'd be weird, but
nobody would be expecting that at all.
Yeah,
it's like just throw you off.
But I do like what Missouri has this year. They got Luther Burden at receiver, dude. They got a pretty good quarterback. But you're still in the SEC. It's going to be tough. You got to play Georgia. You got to play Tennessee. You got to play South Carolina. But I do think Missouri can make some noise in the East. Maybe they're not going to win the East because Georgia's got that on lockdown. But I think they can make some noise in the East where they finish second or where they could. Now I'm not saying they will finish second or third in the East, and that would be a success for them. But
yeah, but I mean Missouri has a tough schedule too. Looking at it, like they play teams like Kansas State.
Yeah,
week 3 in Kansas State, like that's a pretty big
reigning Big 12 champions.
Yeah,
so.
Exactly. Like out of conference team, then obviously got to play LSU, Georgia, and Tennessee. So yeah, it definitely makes the seed even hotter.
Yeah.
So
I mean, those are just coaches we think there's not. I don't know if there's going to be a lot of turnover this offseason because there are a bunch of schools with coaches in their first and second year. You could throw out Sark as a guy, Steve Sarkisian as a guy out there. If Texas underperforms this year, I don't think it'll happen. I think it'll be a much closer game than people expect. I think if they get blown out by Alabama and then they lose, to Kansas State or TCU, they lose 3 or 4 games in the Big 12. They underperform. Some people have them in their playoff. A lot of people have them in their playoff picture. Desmond Howard, so that might be an indication. As a Bama fan, I'm not thrilled about being in Desmond Howard's playoff picture. But what we're going to see, he at least got one team right last year, and that was Michigan. But
that is
all
true.
3 other teams that he had in it last year, it was A&M, Pitt, and Baylor. They all had subpar seasons.
But this year's predictions were a little bit more realistic.
Yeah.
Last year's predictions, I think it threw everybody off because it was almost like it was like a thing.
It came out of nowhere.
Yeah, people
came out of nowhere.
What is he thinking? And I mean, this year's was a little bit better, but
and then Pat McAfee and Kirk Herbstreit went very vanilla and just picked Georgia and Alabama and Michigan and Ohio State.
Yeah, I mean,
and they all picked Alabama. I'm like, to win it all. I'm like, please don't do this to us. Make us an underdog. We play better when it's an underdog. But anyway, so Texas, I don't think Sark's on the hot seat there. I mean, he did get Arch Manning, the savior there. He did get Quinn Ewers there. So I think Texas will have a great year. So I don't think Sark, but he's a guy you could throw out there. If Texas underperforms, you never know. So teams are desperately looking for that instant success, that instant turnaround. And Auburn fans have been a little bit more realistic this season than normal than they were about
expecting way too much.
But my example with that though is like Auburn fans, for example, are already expecting an 8-4, 9-3 season under their first year with Hugh Freeze, which is entirely possible. But I mean, if he does, for instance, go 6-6 or 7-5, don't be so quick to because Saban's first couple years, man, they weren't all sunshine and rainbows. He went 6-6 his first year, lost to Louisiana Monroe, and then Kirby found it took Kirby a while to find his way. So I mean, it's
gonna happen. It's gonna happen.
It takes time for some of these coaches to first of all get their recruiting classes in, get the guys that they want in, that fits their system, fits their culture, and it takes a while. So I mean, fans and
it's even harder with NIL nowadays too.
Yeah,
you got to compete with that.
You got to find a way. You got to find ways to navigate through NIL and the transfer portal. So I think it's a little bit hard. I think it's harder being a head coach in college football than it is being in the NFL. I really do.
I would agree. And I don't know. I think one coach I'm kind of expecting a lot of out of this year, which kind of leads into the week one sort of stuff, is Billy Napier. I mean, I don't expect him to have a great year, but I expect him to have a better year than last year. He went 6-7 last year.
I don't know. I'm not a Graham Mertz believer.
Okay, I'm not a Graham Mertz believer either, but I don't know. I could see Florida doing a little bit better than last year.
Yeah.
Just like more success than a 6-7 year. I think Billy Napier's up from here right now, but I'm not saying he's going to completely turn Florida around. But
now if Florida has a terrible year this year, Florida's hard to predict because you don't know what they're going to be. They have the talent to be pretty good, but you never know. But he's also a guy in his second year that could be thrown out there, and the fans could completely turn on him and just say, "Hey, screw it, give it somebody else."
Yeah, literally.
But I mean, like I said, I mean, fans and people within the universities expect that instant success and instant turnaround and stuff like that.
It's not that easy. It's really
and the only time where you really saw that. Only time you really see that, as you saw it last year with TCU, which rarely ever happens, where you have a team that probably I don't even remember in 2021 if TCU was even ranked in the season, but when they come out of nowhere and make the national championship game, and Sonny Dykes' first year as head coach. But I mean that rarely ever happens. So
I think the only other time I could say that something like that happened was Ryan Day's first year at Ohio State, but he also inherited a program that was under Urban Meyer. And I mean, it's I think his first year as a head coach, made it to the national championship, lost, but I mean.
So I think those are some of like our guys that our coaches, the coaches we think they're gonna have are like either gonna get the boot after the season if they underperform, or that seat is just that seat temperature is rising and they're on the hot seat. So
you're gonna see lots of stuff this year. With I don't think there's gonna be anything like Frost last year for Nebraska, like mid-season form. I don't see any big schools getting
or Pat Fitzgerald with Northwestern.
I don't see any big schools getting rid of like their head coaches mid-season. We'll see.
Everybody's predicting, and there are people out there who predict every season that Saban's going to retire after every season now. So and
I don't see that happening after this year either. But that leads us straight into our week one segment with our predictions for this upcoming season. All right, before we dive into segment 2, we would like to thank our segment 2 sponsor, 251 Pool Works. Family owned and operated, 251 Pool Works offers pool cleaning, maintenance, and repair. They serve the greater Mobile, Baldwin County, and Pensacola areas. And if you are needing any monthly pool cleaning service and or repair, give them a call at 251-978-7736 for the Pool Works. We thank 251 Pool Works for sponsoring this segment and for just helping our podcast as a whole just benefit and grow and to help them grow too. We thank them so much. And if you need any pool cleaning or getting ready for the fall coming up, just hit them up at 251 Pool Works and they'll do a great job for you all.
All right, man. It's week one. We have made it. Week 0 it's week 0 in the past, but it's week 1. Majority of the teams play this weekend. Bama plays Middle Tennessee State. I'm looking forward to see the quarterback situation, how that plays out. I think all of them are going to get a shot. Ohio State and their starting quarterback, they play Indiana. But there's a few games. And there's not. There's some big matchups this weekend, but there's still some quote unquote cupcake games. But the ones we want to highlight, there's like 5 or 6 games we want to preview for our week 1 preview, and we're going to start off with
Florida, Utah.
Thursday night's game, Florida and Utah.
Yeah, just after talking about Billy Napier there a little bit, Billy Napier versus Kyle Whittingham, 2-time Pac-12 champions, coming to face Florida at home this year.
Yeah, last year it was in the swamp. It was. I think last year it was a little bit of a, first of all, an environment type of game because I've never been to Utah, so you probably correct me on this. People from Utah who see this, I have a contact in Utah that I like to talk to. Me and her met at the Senior Bowl. We talk about Utah football a lot. But anyway, I think it was like, first of all, the humidity and heat in Florida is probably not the same in Utah. And not only that, but the swamp is just. And I've been to the swamp. Bama played at the swamp a couple years ago. Me and a buddy of mine and my dad went. That was just an electric atmosphere. Won't back down at the end of the third quarter was electric. The gator chomping, all that. The fans were electric. I enjoyed everything about the swamp. So
but this year
Utah
has that edge being at home, and I mean they're ranked 14th.
Yeah,
they're ranked 14th in the country. Florida's coming to them. They just won the Pac-12 championship, beat USC twice last year. They have Cameron Rising coming back. Yes, they lost Dalton Kincaid. I think, though, one of the big keys that Utah has this year, Brian and I were talking about it a little bit before the episode started, is Jaquindon Jackson, the running back at Utah. He came in last year, was a transfer to Utah this past year, was formerly a quarterback at Texas, came into Utah last year. I mean, he didn't have a crazy year because he was splitting snaps with Utah's running back that is now in the NFL. But Jaquindon Jackson averaged 6.8 yards per carry last year, rushed for a little over 500 yards, 9 touchdowns. But he's going to be the running back one. He's a big kid, and it's exactly what Utah needs against this Florida team. And I think it's going to be a good game, but I think Utah definitely has the edge.
I think Utah has the edge too. But now Florida definitely has talent. Florida has SEC level talent. Now I don't know what the quarterbacks. I mean, Graham Mertz has been named the starting quarterback for this game. I don't know if I just don't know. We don't know enough about him at Florida yet. I mean, we watched him at Wisconsin. I don't think he was all that good. But my big key to me is in the trenches. It's like for that in Utah. Kyle Whittingham has kind of built Utah like an SEC and a Big Ten team to where they're physical up front on both sides of the ball. They're really good on defense. They're going to be really good on defense. This game came down to the wire last year. It was a 3-point game last year.
29-26.
And so, I don't know, man. It's just I'm not going to make my pick just yet. We're going to wait till our last segment to make our picks. But I definitely – Utah, I think, has the edge in this game. Now, we don't know if Cam Rising is going to be out there week 1 or this for Thursday night. I think he's still coming back from injury last year.
And the Rose Bowl.
And the Rose Bowl. But I think they have enough pieces to get the job done. Now, now Utah is on upset alert. I do think Florida could come in there and still win. Somebody made a point the other day. Even some of the worst SEC teams, we're not counting Vanderbilt, can come in and beat some of the best, Pac-12 teams or some. Because and it can be said for maybe the Big Ten as well. But Florida is still one of the premier programs in the SEC. Their reputation. Florida in general is just a big brand. So they could certainly come in there and shock us all. And
easily. But some key things to take away too. The spread for this game is only Utah -4.5. So it's supposed to be a close game. Either way, super close game. And one thing to take away too is something that I read is that Utah since 2021 has averaged 5.5 yards per rush, which is the best in all of us and the best in all of FBS. So expect Utah to run the living crap out of the ball, especially to Jackson.
But my concern with Utah, and I think it comes down to the quarterback first and foremost. If Cam Rising is not out there, and if he is out there, he's not going to be 100%. Obviously, what percent is he going to be? But if Florida is able to shut them down in the run, can they pass the ball? Because they lost their best weapon in Dalton Kincaid. Who will step up for Utah in the passing game? And also Florida's got a run game of their own. They got Travis Etienne's little brother. I forget his name, but Etienne Jr. He's pretty good. He was electric last year for Florida in moments. And so this one's going to be I think this one's going to be a close game. But, right now, I'm not, like I said, I'm saving my picks for later. I want to pick it right now, but I'll save my picks for later. But yeah, I really like this one to open the season on Thursday night. There's another big one on Thursday night, Nebraska, Minnesota. We're not going to preview that one, but we will pick it later. But what's our next game?
I think our next game is Colorado at TCU.
Yep.
And that's a huge game considering that Colorado's, I wouldn't say really getting hyped up, but they really are. With
it's Primetime's first game, man.
George Sanders. I think everybody just saw Travis Hunter's Heisman predictions, having himself win the Heisman.
Yeah. He very well could. Yeah. If he plays both sides of the ball and it has a very
great job. Yeah, but what better way to be confident in yourself and be betting on yourself in that kind of way?
Yeah.
But man, it is going to be a huge opening game for Colorado,
and they're at TCU on the road. The spread for this one is 20.5. They don't really expect much from Utah on this one. I think it is a little bit closer. I could see Utah covering.
You mean Colorado?
Not Utah. Yeah, I'm still in Utah. I can see Colorado still covering. I just think TCU, they have a bitter taste in their mouth. After the national championship game, they want to prove that last year was not a one-off season, that it wasn't, a Cinderella. They're looking to get off to a pretty good start against a underrated Utah team because we just don't know what Utah's going to be. But there's also, some shoes to fill with TCU as well. They lost Max Duggan. They lost Quentin Johnston to the draft. They lost some other pieces, as well. But they bring in, I think they brought in Trey Sanders from Alabama, running back. They brought in JoJo Earl, running back from a wide receiver from Alabama. They brought in a lineman from Alabama. They got some Bama transfers. But they also, they did a lot in the portal. And Sonny Dykes, he's a really good coach. I like what he does. I like the physicality TCU plays with. So,
and that's the thing for me too. Like we already talked about it, talking about our coaches. Sonny Dykes went 12-0 in his first regular season.
Sonny Dykes,
at TCU, and I just think with Colorado getting the 50+ transfers that they got going into their first game at TCU, I think it is a stretch for them.
It's a tall task. It's a tall task for sure. But
I'm not putting it past them at all because they definitely could take that game. But personally, I don't want to give my predictions, but it's already kind of leaning towards where my prediction is. But
TCU definitely has the edge. Exactly. TCU, I think, has probably superior talent to Colorado right now. Well, my thing with Colorado, and we talked about this when we covered Colorado back in the spring, is can Deion, and I'm sure he can, if anybody probably could do it, he probably could because a lot of people look up to him because not only his accolades in the NFL, but what he's trying to accomplish at Colorado. Can he get all these guys that he brought in from the portal? Because their roster turnover is crazy. Like I don't know how many guys they have that are from last year's roster, but it's very few players. It's a lot of new faces,
like less than 10 from something like that.
And it's a lot of new faces. Can he get all of them to mesh and play together as a team? Because portal, a lot of kids go into the portal, and it's not. And I'm not condemning it by any means. Or if kids looking for another opportunity somewhere else, that's perfectly fine with me. But a lot of kids go into the portal, and they're looking for what's the best opportunity for them, and they go to a culture that best fits them. So can he get them all to mesh and play as a team, and buy into what he's trying to do there at Colorado? So but this is a fascinating game, not only because it's his first game, but TCU coming off a Cinderella run that left a bad taste in their mouth. Being blown out and embarrassed by Georgia in the national championship game. I think like I said, I think they have something to prove as well.
Yeah, 100%. And then that kind of leads into the next game where College Game Day is going to be on Saturday. North Carolina at South Carolina. That's big battle of the Carolinas going on there. Beamer going into his third year.
Mac Brown.
You got Drake May coming to South Carolina.
Spencer Rattler in his 18th year.
Exactly. It's going to be a really good game, and I expect to see a lot out of South Carolina, considering I wouldn't say that they had any phenomenal type of year last year under Shane Beamer, but I think towards the end of the year, they shocked some people. They shocked some teams, specifically Clemson and stuff like that. Like South Carolina, I think I wouldn't say like outperformed anybody, but I think that they kind of stood out a little bit last year as a team, kind of more as a diamond in the rough.
Yeah,
like not a great year, but you can expect a lot out of them this year.
And I respect the hell out of Shane Beamer. I met it when I covered the Senior Bowl this past February. For the Jag Media, I got the opportunity to meet him on the field. He took a few minutes out of his time to talk to me. So I respect the hell out of him. He probably don't remember me now, but that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter to me all that much. But he took a few minutes out of his time to talk and have a conversation with me. Well, this game comes it's another game where it comes down to me. South Carolina has skill position players. They have. I think they'll be all right on defense. Can they be good up front? Can they be good on the offensive line? North Carolina, can they prevent Drake May from having to do everything himself?
Exactly.
Because they're losing Josh Downs. They lost Josh Downs to the draft, and so I don't know, man. This one's a tough one for me to predict. I'm not gonna lie.
It is. It really is, because I think South Carolina honestly might have a little bit more experience.
Yeah.
And I mean, the thing though with North Carolina is they have Drake May.
But the X factor for North Carolina is Drake May.
Exactly. And Drake May, obviously Heisman favorite. He's up there. Like everybody's expecting a lot out of him this year, but who knows what happens week one?
Yeah, week
going
one.
to South Carolina College Game Day, that kind of environment that he's having to experience.
And on the other side, at quarterback, Spencer Rattler has gone through some ups and downs in his career. I think he's kind of found his groove at South Carolina, but still he was a little bit inconsistent last year. Can he finally put it all together? And it's probably his final year. Can he be more consistent? Can he can he put it all together and give South Carolina a pretty good season? What they know they can be. Probably not SEC hopes, but just keep.
Yeah, exactly. Like both these teams too finished with 5 losses this past year. I don't think either of them. North Carolina could maybe be competing for an ACC type champion. Yeah, ACC type championship, but I don't know if they will be for sure. Especially like we said, keep saying Drake May having to carry this whole team. But I mean, dude, it's going to be fun to see both of these quarterbacks
go at it.
May and Rattler just like literally.
Talk about a quarterback battle. That's one to watch, and then another quarterback battle to watch on Sunday night. One game on Sunday night. Starting Thursday will be 5 straight days of college football. You have some games on Thursday, like Florida and Utah, Minnesota, and Nebraska. You got like Louisville and Georgia Tech on Friday night, and then like Michigan State and Central Michigan. And you got most of your games on Saturday, but Sunday night is probably the biggest game of Week 1, and that's LSU and FSU. Man, that one is a huge playoff implication matchup in Week 1. Man, it's like 5 versus what? Like
5 versus
8. So
Florida State's 8. LSU's 5, and I mean, last year this game was a huge
game. Down to the wire.
Yeah, came down to the wire. But I think this year is obviously even
bigger, because
literally even bigger. And this game could be a potential playoff game.
Exactly. So to me, and I've been going back and forth on this one because LSU has their running back Emory is not playing, and then they lost Mason Smith. They're one of their defensive linemen is being suspended for a game, which I think is just completely stupid, by the way. But we're not going to get into that. But I think LSU, like I said, I picked LSU to win the national title, go undefeated. But I mean, this game is very much a coin flip game. It was last year, but like last year with this game, both of these teams weren't expecting to be as good as they were last year. Florida
easily.
State overachieved, and so did LSU. Now this year, both these teams come in with championship expectations, championship level caliber expectations for both teams, and so
both have a lot returning. So I mean, you look at just like the quarterback battle through. It's definitely not as good as North Carolina, South Carolina, but between Jaden Daniels and Jordan Travis,
and then Florida State has Johnny Wilson. They got Keon Coleman from Michigan State.
They have
Jared Verse, who's
arguably one of the best pass rushers in college football,
along with Harold Perkins, who's on the other side of LSU.
One person to look forward to, I think one guy, kind of a random name, but Braden Fisk. He's a transfer from Western Michigan, played all 4 years at Western Michigan, transferred to Florida State this year. He's a 6'3", like 300-pound interior lineman who went off at Western Michigan. I expect him to at least get one sack on Jaden Daniels on Sunday.
I don't know. Jaden Daniels can move, man.
I know, but this dude, Braden Fisk, man, he can move too for a 300-pound big boy. And I expect to see him at the ball.
One guy I'm excited to see or two is Malik Neighbors, probably their wide receiver one. You lose Kayshon Boutte last year to the draft, probably your most productive receiver in the last couple of years since you lost Jefferson and Jamar Chase, and that just, I don't even know how to describe it. That awesome of a receiving duo, but you lose Kayshon Boutte or Boutte, however you say it, and now you got Malik Neighbors stepping up, probably being wide receiver one. I'm interested to see what we got him. He's really good. He showed out against Bama last year. I'm excited to see him. I'm excited to see the defensive side of the ball as well. The pass rush is going to be awesome, but I do think they lose a little bit up front because of Mason Smith's suspension. But I do think LSU. I favor LSU in this one, but I think LSU is favored by 2.5. Yeah. But we'll see when I make my predictions, because like I said, I've been back and forth on this game. It's literally a coin flip, man.
Seriously, this game is another coin flip game though. Between the two is coming home to Mobile. Our South Alabama Jaguars take on Tulane.
We wanted to save this one for last.
Yeah, and we got the helmets here. Brian's repping some
a huge group of five matchup.
Arguably the biggest group of five matchup of the year.
Probably so, and I don't think a lot of people are. I think a lot of people are underlooking this matchup. But I mean, this could have New Year's. I don't think it'll have playoff implications, but it'll have New Year's 6 implications. Sun Belt versus American. South Alabama travels on the road to New Orleans, where they ended the season last year being I don't want to say blown out, but they did not
perform to expectations
against Western Kentucky.
Yeah.
This one's just huge. To me, for this game, South Alabama is going. South Alabama has something to prove. Coach Kane Womack has done a phenomenal job here in his second year, winning 10 wins. 10 wins at this school or at this program means a lot.
And the two losses were just not
two losses
to two great teams. They lost to Troy by
5 points.
5, and then lost to UCLA by 1.
There was 2 losses in the regular season by 5 points. They could have easily gone undefeated had a couple things gone their way in the UCLA game and in the Troy game. South Alabama was just looking. This team was looking to prove themselves to be consistent. And that last year, kind of like TCU in a sense, where last year wasn't a one-off year. Last year wasn't just one of those years where you're really good. They want to prove that they can be good consistently. And South Alabama returns 20 of 21 starters on both sides of the ball. That is extremely important. Probably one of the most experienced teams in the country. I mean, all you really lost on defense was Darrell Luter, who was on who's playing with the 49ers now, and then Jalen Wayne on offense,
who's with the Browns now.
Now Tulane has some bigger shoes to fill, especially at running back. This is where the game comes down to for me for Tulane is, will they be able to run the ball
after losing Tyjae Spears?
Losing Tyjae Spears, because he was their leading rusher last year by a mile, over 1,500 yards. Then your next leading rusher was their quarterback, Michael Pratt, who is a stud. Michael Pratt is really good. But can they run the ball? Can they find their successor to Tajay Spears? And then on the other side of the ball, to South Alabama, I think their strength is the run game because you're returning LaDamian Webb at
he rushed for over 1,000 yards.
Over 1,000 yards. I think it was like maybe 1,200. I think it was. I don't remember the exact number. And then, but not only that, but you got Braylon McReynolds. You know, he shined last year as a freshman, hometown kid from the 251. And then you got a guy that a lot of people don't know about, but I'm not going to give too much away about him because I do see a lot of the practices. But Ole Miss transfer Kentrell Bullock has been lighting it up from what I've heard, and I think he can make an impact as well. That running back room is deep. They got some recruits as well in that running back room, and also the wide receiver room is deep. You know, you think after losing Jalen, 3 straight years of Jalen Tolbert, Jalen Wayne, and then there was another guy they lost before that. I forget his name. They lost, so they lost some receiver production, but they also got Devin Voisin and Colin Lacey coming back. Then you add a guy through the portal who has a lot of experience in Javon Ivory.
Yeah, it's just South Alabama has a ton of experience going to this game, and I mean,
and then not only that, you get your quarterback back, Carter Bradley, who we've had on this podcast back in March.
And Carter Bradley's a stud, man.
He could spin it.
Broke quite a few records last year for South Alabama.
This is talking about quarterback battles. This is an intriguing quarterback battle as well between Michael Pratt and Carter Bradley. This is a really good matchup for Week 1. A really good treat for Week 1 that I don't think a lot of people are talking about.
Exactly. It's on ESPN Plus. I'm definitely going to be watching.
It's going to be on ESPNU and ESPN Plus.
Yeah,
so.
But I just think there's a lot of people that are not really paying attention to this game because there's so many other bigger games they want to say. But this is a game that has huge implications for both teams. And both of these schools, Tulane and South Alabama, are both going to have outstanding years this year. I think both of them are two of the top. I wouldn't say both of them are definitely at the top of all the Group of 5 schools. There's not many other.
There's these two, and then there's UTSA as well. You also got to throw Troy into the mix, the reigning Sun Belt champions. But I mean, this one will have implications for down the road. Both of these teams are going to get off to a very good start. I mean, a win for either of these teams, and this big of a matchup in the Group of 5 would mean probably get a lot of momentum going. Tulane's favored by 6.5 in this one. I'm not going to give away my pick just yet, but man, I like what South Alabama's got going into this game. They're in a good place health wise. I think South Alabama's strength is going to be the run game. On defense, I think they're going to be really good, especially up front. I think one of my main concern for South Alabama is, and it's just because they did lose Luter and they lost another guy in the secondary last year. I'm anxious to watch the secondary. I think they brought in a new cornerbacks coach, and then they also they've been changing. I think they've been changing some things after the way the Western Kentucky game went.
Yeah.
But I do think the secondary will come through and shine. But I still am anxious to watch them in their first game, and I'm also anxious to watch a linebacker as well. But man, I think this is a really good game. I think this is going to be a dogfight in New Orleans. I really do.
One of the bigger games of the week for us. I mean, obviously, we're fans of South Alabama. So
we're students, man. We got
either way. This game is going to be insane. And
I mean, I'll be there. I'll be there with the team. And I really like this game. Probably my favorite matchup of the week is this game right here. And I can't.
It's my second favorite.
I'm a Bama fan, but let's be honest, they're probably going to roll through Middle Tennessee State.
Exactly. And same with Ohio State and Indiana.
I don't know, man. Indiana, watch out for. No, I'm just joking. But sorry, Indiana fans, but y'all probably aren't beating Ohio State this weekend. But no, I'm really excited for this game. I'll be there in New Orleans with them. It's going to be electric. I think I'm excited. I'm excited for this one. I can't.
Seriously, it'll be a blast for sure. And I don't know if we have much else to say for our week one preview, but
now it's time to make some picks, man.
Now it's time to make some picks. We're going to bring a friend on, and a
friend of mine, guest picker. We'll introduce him when we come back, man.
So stay tuned. All right, welcome to our Pick'em segment of today's episode. We brought in Cody today.
For the very first one, my friend Cody Aspinwall. We've been friends for I don't know how long now.
But we're going to go through some of the bigger matchups for this week, and all three of us are going to kind of give our predictions for who we think will take the game and win it.
And remember, out of our guest pickers, whoever does the best at the end of the season, we're going to tally up, how many they got right versus how many they got wrong, and whoever does the best at the end of the season will get a prize. So the prize is to be determined.
Exactly, but we're going to start with Florida at Utah. Brian and I already kind of went in depth on this game a little earlier, but big game at Utah. Cam Rising is officially out. Yep. It's going to be their backup. So, who do y'all got?
I'm taking the Utah Utes just because what they have coming back. I don't think the quarterback situation will matter that much because Utah is a run-first team. That running back that you mentioned earlier, I forget his name. What's his name?
Jaquindon Jackson.
Yes, I think he's the X factor for them. And not only that, I just like how physical Utah plays up front on both sides of the ball. I like their defense, and I like Kyle Whittingham better as a coach. That's just my. And it's at Utah. I think Utah has the home field advantage.
Yeah, I'm going Utah too. Got to go with the Utes. Back-to-back Pac-12 champions. Even without Cam Rising, they're taking the game. So
I'm going to go Utah too. I know that there's been kind of a lot of talk about Florida this offseason, kind of what Napier's doing and rebuilding them up and stuff. But I still don't know enough about Florida. And kind of to Bryant's point, Utah having the home field advantage. Even though Cam Rising's out, I still see Utah, especially after what happened to him last season, what Florida did. I got the Utes coming away with this one.
Perfect. Next game, we got, so all three of us got Utah taking that first game. Next game, Nebraska, Minnesota. All I got to say is I don't know how much y'all know. It's two Big Ten teams. I'm going with Minnesota taking that dub. They're at home. Ethan Kaliak-Manis, their quarterback, returning. He actually went to my rival's high school. And I think that Minnesota is just going to come out on top of that game. Matt Rule's new at Nebraska, but I still think Minnesota is just taking that one.
I think it's a very close one because these two teams are very kind of unknown going into the season, especially Nebraska with a new coach coming in. They dove into the portal a lot. Of course, now you have I think what kind of maybe sets this game apart from Minnesota and Nebraska is Minnesota has not had the distraction this week that Nebraska has had with the Eric Gilbert stuff. And I don't know. I like Minnesota just because they have a little bit more returning, and they're returning PJ Fleck, who's done a pretty good job since he's been at Minnesota. But I like Minnesota, but I think it's closer. I think it's a lot closer game just because it's the opening game of the season.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I like Matt Rule a lot. I really think that he's going to do some big things with Nebraska. But I also like Coach Fleck a lot. To Bryant's point, what he was saying, like you just said, home field advantage for Minnesota. Minnesota has kind of been that team in the Big Ten over the past couple of years that they've somewhat competed. Like they've always kind of been there. They haven't been as elite as Penn State, Michigan, or Ohio State, but Minnesota's always been kind of a team that can compete. And so I'll take Minnesota in this one.
All right, perfect. Next game, College Game Day will be there. UNC, North Carolina at South Carolina.
Battle of the Carolinas.
Yeah, we talked about the duel between Drake May and Spencer Rattler.
What a treat as far as quarterback battles go. I don't know, man. This one's tough. It's kind of a coin flip. I think UNC's favored by 2.5. I could be wrong. I think it was
4.5.
4.5 or something like that. I think North Carolina's favored. I like South Carolina. I like what Shane Beamer has done there. I like some of the weapons they have. I like some of the defensive personnel they got. I like South Carolina. I don't think home field advantage plays a huge role here because they're both in the Carolinas. That's probably an easy trip for both teams. And I like Spencer Rattler's athletic ability. I like what he has to work with more than I like what Drake May has to work with. Drake May is obviously the better quarterback, but I think Drake May is about to go into a season where, kind of like Bryce Young last year, where he has to be the unsung hero in every game almost, where, I don't know, he's like the X factor. I don't know, I like South Carolina. I want to see Spencer Rattler to be consistent, but I like South Carolina.
I knew you were going to go there, but for me personally, I think South Carolina could win the game, that Spencer Rattler has the weapons, but I think that Drake May proved last year that he can do more with less. Was already a top contender last year for Heisman, a top contender going into this year. It's week 1, and he's going to try to prove as much as he can, especially with college game day there at South Carolina. Like, he has to go out with a punch in his first game going into the season, especially for his Heisman campaign. So I got Drake May and UNC coming out on top.
Brian, I know me and you talked last year about a lot of the memes that people were making about South Carolina, that they were a team that literally they were playing like one game, it's like Spencer Rattler, Heisman type game. South Carolina could beat anybody. And then the next game, it's like worst team ever. And there was no in between.
Yeah.
I think South Carolina has a lot of momentum going into the season, especially with Coach Beamer. But I think the key difference in this game, Josh just pointed it out, is Drake May. Drake May, you can argue that he's one of the best players in college football right now. I think North Carolina is going to have to compete this year with some of the teams in the ACC. But as far as week 1 against South Carolina, I like Drake May in North Carolina.
All right.
Next game after that, Coastal Carolina at UCLA. We got Grayson McCall coming back. UCLA obviously lost Dorian Thompson-Robinson, their running back, and Charbonnet or whatever, who went to the Seahawks too. They lost quite a few other people.
Which is why I think this is like a sneak game. I originally wasn't thinking of us picking this game at first, but you take a look at what UCLA lost, and they got a new starting quarterback, new running back stepping up. And just to think about some of the close games they had last year. I mean, South Alabama went to the Rose Bowl last year and was literally 1 point away from beating them. I mean, one fake field goal away from beating them, or 4th down conversion away from beating them. And I like Coastal Carolina, Grayson McCall got a lot of attention in the portal, but he came back and he stayed with Coastal Carolina. I'm still taking the Bruins here, but I think it's very close. I think it's a situation last year with South and UCLA where it's a dogfight to the end.
No, I 100% agree with you, but unfortunately, I think with Grayson McCall coming back, like I said, it kind of same thing. I mean, not the same thing with Drake May situation, but I think that Coastal Carolina just has a little bit more experience going into this game. Even though they're a Group of 5 school, I think that UCLA just isn't where they want to be right now, and I think Coastal Carolina. I think Coastal Carolina stuns them. We always see that every single year. There's always that Group of 5 school that's playing a Power 5 school that always week 1, week 2 pulls off an upset.
UCLA is favored by 14.5, but I think that's a close one. I mean, I don't know. So what do you think?
No, I like both of the takes. I definitely see this being a competitive game, a close one. Kind of like what you said, Bryant. Like, even if UCLA wins, I can definitely see it coming down literally to the wire, like a last play kind of thing. But I still like Chip Kelly. I don't like that UCLA lost a lot. Josh, I know that you kind of pointed that out. Lost a lot of key players, but I still like Chip Kelly, and I still like. Y'all said it was at UCLA, right?
At UCLA.
I like the home field advantage, so I'm going to take UCLA.
All right, the next game,
probably game of the week,
the most debatable pick'em right here.
Sunday's treat.
LSU at FSU. It's obviously not at Florida State, but it's in Florida, and that's one of the biggest games right here. Probably one of the biggest games
of week 1.
Yeah, of week 1, of like the first couple of weeks of college football.
And it has huge playoff implications. This was really a coin flip, especially like we mentioned earlier, Mason Smith not being there on the defensive line for LSU. One of their running backs is going to be out. But I picked LSU to go undefeated and win it all this year, so I'm sticking by my pick. I'm going with the Tigers. Brian Kelly in his second year, man. They lost this game in New Orleans last year in the Superdome by a missed field goal. I like LSU here in a bit. I don't want to say a big. I like it probably LSU by a touchdown. But I really like, and I like FSU as well. I like what Mike Norvell has done there. The transfers he brought in. Not only we had something back in Jordan Travis, it's going to be Jay Daniels versus Jordan Travis, 2 Heisman candidates at going at it. I like the Tigers, man. Go Tigers.
For me, I know we were texting last night. We both were talking about how much of a struggle it is for this matchup specifically, because both of these teams have like rebuilt a lot. They're definitely on the uprise. Like Florida State could be seen in the playoff, maybe. Same with LSU. I like Jordan Travis. I like Jaden Burse. I'm one of the best pass rushers in college football. I already talked about that. Braden Fisk, the one defensive lineman they brought in too, is going to wreak some havoc. Like, I just think Florida State's defense has the edge over LSU going into this game, and I think that they're going to be able to wreak some havoc on Jaden Daniels. So I'm picking Florida State.
You know, I think it's very interesting, Bryant. Me and you've talked about this. LSU, it seems like every year that they're predicted, like, you know, going into the regular season, they're predicted to be like, have it all, like this is their season. They always seem to underperform and underwhelm and not live up to what they were.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it is such an LSU thing and such a Brian Kelly thing to go into this game. And maybe it's just because, like, just something about LSU I don't like. But with that being said, I feel like there is a lot of hype on LSU right now, and I buy into it. I'm not, you know, I'm big on LSU
as well, though.
I am big on LSU, but I feel like it's an LSU thing. It's a Brian Kelly thing. So somehow, some way, they're going to crack. With that being said, though, I still like LSU in this one. I can't go against, like Bryant, you mentioned their roster and everything. On paper, LSU is arguably the best team in college football, and so I'm going to take LSU.
And like this game also has major playoff implications. These two teams could see each other again in December and at New Year's. So what's the next game on our list, Josh?
The next game on our list is Clemson at Duke. Dabo Swinney goes in with Cade Klubnik to Wallace-Wade Stadium, hoping to start the season off with a bang against.
Very underrated game because Duke has a very underrated roster. Their quarterback Riley Leonard is pretty darn good. If you follow Duke football, you know, and if you follow him, he's pretty good. I like Riley Leonard. Then again, it is, you know, a Clemson versus Duke situation where the talent, I think, on Clemson is just too much for Duke. I do think it's close for a little while, but you know, I got to pull for the Fairhope native and Riley Leonard at quarterback for Duke, but I'm going with Clemson in this one. Close early, but they pull away late.
Yeah, I would 100% agree. I think Riley Leonard's going to have a great game. And this is also going to be Cade Klubnik's first regular season start for Clemson, but I don't think that's going to apply any pressure to him. I think that he's going to have a phenomenal game, and Dabo is going to come out with a bang, trying to get back on top of the ACC and potentially back in the playoff this year. So I'm picking Clemson.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Josh on this one. I really think, you know, this is the year that Dabo, just like Josh mentioned, he's wanting to get him back on top. I don't really know that much about Duke as far as like what they are as a team. I think, like I was saying with North Carolina, like we talked about Florida State, North Carolina, Clemson, all three teams, you know, going to be the top teams in my opinion in the ACC this year, all going to be competing. But I really think that, you know, Dabo Swinney as a coach and the recruiting that he has going on over at Clemson, and just how they've been, you know, for the past decade now. I think Dabo and Clemson, they start this season off with a bang, beating Duke.
All right, in the last game,
we saved this one last for a reason.
That's for last. We got the South Alabama Jaguars heading to New Orleans to face the Tulane Green Wave, number 24 Tulane Green Wave, ranked in the top 25. And like we talked about earlier, me and Brian said this is probably one of the best Group of 5 matchups that we'll see this whole season, and it's week 1. But to start out, I just got to say, we talked about it earlier, 20 of the 22 starters coming back for South Alabama. I think that, I understand Tulane's great. They came back, rallied back against USC last year in the Cotton Bowl. But man, this South Alabama team is something special what they're building. They just have a lot of leaders on that team, a lot of veterans between Carter Bradley, their quarterback, who's been in the system forever, not forever, but I mean, this is his 4th, 5th year. And I just think South Alabama comes out on top over Tulane.
And, you know, the biggest thing for me in this game is the run game for South Alabama. And then the run game on the other side of the ball, because Tulane, they lost Tajay Spears, who made up almost all of their rushing production with over 1,500 yards. Your next leading rusher after that was Michael Pratt, their quarterback, with 400-something yards. So they got a couple of guys that need to step up at the running back position. And I like Michael Pratt as a quarterback, but can they get the run game going? South Alabama bringing back not only LaDamian Webb, but they have Braylon McReynolds, who was a freshman last year and was able to shine in spots. Marco Lee comes back. Then you bring in a transfer, Kentrell Bullock from Ole Miss, they've been raving about at practice. Then you bring back two of your most productive receivers. You lose Jalen Wayne, but you still bring back Devin Boyson, Colin Lacey, who all three of these guys, Jalen Wayne, Devin Boyson, and Colin Lacey, all had over 800 yards receiving, and they were the leading receivers. You bring back two of those guys. You bring in a transfer like Javon Ivory, a 3-year starter at Memphis, who knows how to play. He's a veteran presence. And on defense, man, you bring back Jamie Sheriff. You bring back Brock Higdon on the edge, and you have Trey Kaiser at linebacker, and you got Jaden Boyson, Jalen Jordan at safety. You got Yam Banks, who really shined last year, had a bunch of picks. I like the South Alabama team this year. I mean, I can't give away too much because I do indeed work for the team. But Kane Womack's got this team ready to go, and I'm going with the South Alabama Jaguars. Little biased to go into Tulane, New Orleans, where they finished the season last year with a loss to Western Kentucky, and get a win coming out of New Orleans.
Yeah, it's hard not to like South. With Bryant, how much he's talking about him and everything. But no, I got to catch a lot of the South game last year, and the bowl game that you mentioned. I know South came up just short in that game, but I know that really, to me, I think that South really can be a team this year that always those out of 5 conferences. I mean, it was Tulane last year. I really can see South being a team that, legitimately, I think last year they finished in some of the polls in the top 25, one of the polls, but
they didn't,
right outside of it.
But they finished very closely to it.
Yeah. I definitely think, Brian, like the stuff that obviously more because, you're with the team and stuff, but from what I've been seeing, just, the community of Mobile as a whole, and just like the stuff that I see on social media and like how they're getting ready for this season. I really like South this season, and Tulane got a tough first 2 weeks against South, and then next week they'll be playing Ole Miss. I'll take the Jaguars.
All right.
I'll take South Alabama over Tulane.
Heck yeah, so that's going to wrap it up for our first Pick'em College Football Week 1 Pick'em segment. And I mean, it was a blast having Cody on, being able to pick them. We'll see how many he got right. We'll talk about it next week and post on our social medias and whatnot. But heck yeah, we're looking forward to see what happens. College football is back. And
5 straight days of college football starting Thursday night.
Heck yeah.
And man,
I'm a happy man.
Next week you got the NFL as well. We will start maybe integrating some NFL games into this as well.
Yeah, 100%. But thank you for tuning in. This is episode 22 of Back to the End Zone podcast. I'm Josh Reisig with Brian Kleski and Cody. Deuces.